Let's get into this, and let's start with this discussion around the role of innovation across the various industries. David, I might ask you to start from Cspan and tell us a little bit about Cspan and the role that innovation and technology are playing for you right now.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for organizing the event. So Cspan, as probably most of you know, is best known for our tugs and barges and ferries that you see all around our harbor and all around the region. The part of the company that I'm in is Cspan Shipyards, which is a little less known. We have two major shipyards on the North Shore in North Vancouver, one at the foot of Pemberton, one just by Lonsdale Quay, another one over in Victoria. And our business is around building new ships and repair and overhaul of existing ships and vessels. And I guess of most note, we were selected back in 2011, 2012 to be the strategic partner of the federal government to build large vessels, primarily for the Coast Guard for the next, let's say 25, 30 years probably. So we're on a long stream to build larger vessels. And there's a range of different vessels, the flagship one being the Polar Icebreaker, which we will be we're in the design phase right now. We'll be building over the next sort of 5-7 years type of time frame. So, you may think that shipbuilding is not really a technology focus, but it is today. First of all, the ships that we build are incredibly technology heavy. They have just a huge amount of technology and on board of them. And then for us, the big focus is around how do we design and build these ships. And we are very, very focused on using digital technologies and those types of things. And so our innovation thrust is really around things like digital twins and digital ships, autonomy, of course, clean technology. There's a huge amount of clean technology going on. And then a range of other things that support how we build things more efficiently and more effectively. So I think that sort of gives you a quick intro to what we do and why we're here. So.
Perfect. Lynette, the old saying of necessity is the mother of invention. It's probably necessity is the mother of innovation in modern terms. Tell us about technology and innovation in the very challenging couple of years for YVR. Oh, you're muted. There we go.
I just wanted to start by saying that everybody that is watching this today, we miss you at the airport. It's been aviation has been one of the hardest hit industries from the pandemic. So for a significant portion of in the last 2 years, our passenger numbers have been down over 90%. So it's been a very challenging time for us as an airport, but at the same time playing a critical role throughout the pandemic. Talking about PPE, Stephen, you talked about that earlier. In the early days of the pandemic, I was watching the planes come in from overseas with that very, very critical PPE that we needed. So all the vaccines that came in that we are all fortunate enough to have access to all came in through the airport. So, on one hand, a very, very significant impact on our passengers, but cargo was something that was moving all throughout the pandemic. Because of the impact on our revenue and our business model, we started to look at different ways of doing our business. So when you think about an airport, there's so many ways that you can innovate. We had quite a narrow focus on innovation prior to the pandemic. It was really about passenger processing. And we learned through the pandemic that we can't rely on passengers numbers to drive our business. We have to take a broader view of innovation. So now we look at everything from the lands that we have to cargo. What kind of innovations can we do in that space? The data, the information. We built a digital twin during the pandemic. So we have a lot more assets that we can use in order to innovate. And as an industry, we historically thought of how we handle growth is by just building more construction. And so we have transitioned from concrete to clicks. We're going to be using digital much, much more to be able to be more efficient as an airport and provide those innovations that our industry needs.
Perfect. And Dave, from a Finning standpoint, can you share perspective on the evolution your organization's been through?
Yeah, evolution is definitely the right term, as we'll talk later. It's a slow process. But much like David, I think the first thing I have to clear up is that Finning is most definitely a technology company. And most of you, if you know them at all, will think of them as the company that sells and services those big yellow pieces of equipment that are typically standing idle by the side of a construction site on a road, which in and of itself is one of the huge opportunities. But much like other industrial businesses, there is significant untapped opportunity for our customers and the customers of our customers in better use of technologies to make those assets, first off, more productive. They should not be sitting idle. They're expensive assets. And everyone would like to get the roads back in use, I'm sure, and be more efficient as we are quarrying and mining and doing all the things that heavy equipment has to do. Secondly, safer. And third, more environmentally friendly. And so when I think of innovation, it's not just about digital. We also are doing a lot of work with battery electric vehicles, hydrogen, and helping our customers through the energy transition processes, even whilst we're still hydrocarbon dependent for some time with biodiesel and gas blending and so on. But very much so, for those that don't know Finning, we're roughly an $8 billion business, 90-year-old, founded in Vancouver. And our businesses are in South America, predominantly Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, Western Canada, and Europe. And technology is definitely at the forefront today of everything we do and everything we take to the market. But that hasn't always been the case, as we'll get to talk about later. Thank you for having me here. This is something I'm very passionate about, the reason I sit on BC Tech's board, but really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, perfect. So each of you have gone through different sort of stages of your journey. There's lots of challenges that come along the way, but more important than just the challenges is what you've done to and rise above them, get past them, drive forward, and innovation is about advancing new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of working. So maybe Lynette, we'll go back to you. Tell us a little bit about the challenges, but more so, what did you do to lift your organization over those challenges and really get the fire burning?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, as I said, a very interesting time. So pretty easy just to kind of retreat and just wait for all the passengers to come back. We did not do that. We took a very proactive approach. We saw a number of things change through the pandemic, one of them being an awareness around climate. And we, as an industry, play a significant role in the amount of GHGs that are emitted. And so we have put forward a plan to be net zero by 2030 for our own operations. But frankly, the bigger opportunity is influencing our partners. And so we have a number of initiatives that we're working towards in order to help with that, which I can talk about in a minute. We're looking at our land and how do we leverage our land to move some of those climate initiatives. So General Fusion is actually going to be located on our lands on Sea Island. And so how do we use every asset that we have in order to drive our strategies? And those strategies are around climate, as I talked about. They're also around carbon or cargo and logistics. So pre-pandemic, cargo movement on Sea Island was pretty opaque. We really didn't know what was happening. So we have some initiatives that we're looking at to be able to understand how movement happens at the airport and of course get the efficiencies. So that helps with costs, but it also helps with the climate because lots of times trucks are idling and waiting and for a package that's arrived and don't know where it is. All of those inefficiencies are happening all the time on Sea Island, and we need to address that. And then the third area is the passenger experience and making sure that there's efficiency as people are moving through the terminal. And the more efficient that we make those processes, and planes leaving on time and on-time performance helps with reducing GHGs, but also helps with our financial sustainability at the airport. So we are just taking a much broader view to innovation. Historically, it's been about passenger processing, and now it's about leveraging every asset that we have in order to serve our strategies.
Great. And David, I'm going to reference something that both you and Lynette referred to was a digital twin. Can you, kind of building on this new journey of and challenges you face, can you describe what digital twin means to you and how that has supported this innovation journey?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of our journey, it's kind of an interesting one, because even though we're also a very long history company, the shipbuilding had been pretty much shut down in North Vancouver. And so in 2011, we kind of restarted it, rebuilt it. And part of that was the whole recapitalization of our shipyard. But as part of that was the entire digital environment of how we design and build ships. And so we're very much evolving to a fully digital environment that not only the ship is designed in 3 dimensions and all the data and data heaps are underneath it, but also that then drives things like robotic welding, robotic cutting, and other things in our shipyard, all with the goal of driving towards globally competitive, us being globally competitive. To answer your specific question, I mean, there's sort of 2 digital twins in our context. And the one that we mostly focus on is the one of the actual ships themselves. So the process of designing a ship nowadays is very much a 3D, a very sophisticated software and systems where the design is entirely done in 3D. And then not only the model of the ship, but also, of course, all the systems and subsystems that are on the ship and all the data related to all those systems and subsystems. And so the collection of all that and the linkage of all that is what we refer to as a digital twin or digital ship. Then on top of that, it's the ability to visualize that and work with that in a visual environment. So we've been invested in a virtual reality capability and system and facility in North Vancouver that allows a visualization and collaboration in a virtual environment. But really the power is having all that data underneath that you can then operate on. And the long-term goal for us is not only to use that in the whole construction side, but also in the through life support side. So the other side that we're spending a lot of time in innovation is around how do we put sensors and instrumentation and other things onto the vessels. So once they move into operation, you can then feed real-time data back into the digital twin. And then you start to apply things like artificial intelligence and other types of operational modeling to pre-detect. And I think to be honest, the aviation industry is way far ahead of the ship industry in this front. But that is where we're going, that we will, when we're operating these vessels, we will also have essentially an operating version of the vessel in the digital space as well that mirrors it. So
perfect. And Dave Cummings, Finning has taken a similar journey around equipment. What sort of challenges did you face in creating this new digital environment for heavy equipment and insights? And tell me about the challenges and some of the things you overcame.
Yeah, and actually, I think this can relate to the way I respond to this, to the overall topic here about culture and even one of the questions I just see posted here. Over the last 30 years, though I didn't start life as a technologist, my niche has become finding ways to apply technology to a physical traditional business model, as someone I think has introduced me in my overview earlier. At least I used to say it was a niche. Now it's very common to see that as an opportunity or a risk if your business model is under threat, quite frankly. The barrier to that usually isn't technology, in my experience. The barrier to that is making the technology that's there relevant to that business model's threats or opportunities. I often say to my teams, I don't need you to develop another form of electricity, which, by the way, a lot of innovators on the technology side are really keen to do. They're really keen to register IP and to create new. And in this industrial business model, it's far more relevant, whether you're an internal innovator or one of our guests here that are trying to get a startup off the ground. It's very important to find relevance within the context of that business model. I mean, who knew when iPhones developed a camera or smartphones started to add cameras, that would become a significant security addition with facial recognition? Or in my case, remove a significant obstacle in recognizing the part number, finding the correct part number, a SKU number, as we would say. I can do that now through a camera, looking at an image with image recognition software. But I'm pretty confident when the camera was first added, that wasn't what people were thinking about as its use case. And there are endless opportunities right now with technologies, if you can make it relevant. And what I find to be the most interesting challenge in innovation is bridging between what is there and usable and a use case that hasn't yet been imagined. If you think back over, the growth of internet, the growth of smartphones, even PCs, it's very rare that at the beginning when things start, every way they're going to end up. Getting ahead of that and in front of that and identifying those significant opportunities, I think, is the key. The problem with that is I can find technology innovators pretty easily, quite to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I love being surrounded by them. I can find business process people that are fantastic. The hard part is finding those that can bridge between the two and see things that are possible and start to articulate why people should care and why it's relevant. So for me, really, the journey in thinning has been not about invention of technology. It's finding ways to apply what is there in different ways to our business model and to our customers' business models, quite mm-hmm. frankly.
So it's often, it sounds like it's about creating a culture within the organization that is looking for those ways to take technology, new ideas, and apply them in some meaningful way to your customers or your business. Maybe back to you, Lynette, how, from a culture standpoint, in creating that hunger, creating that willingness, creating that movement from just week by week, quarter by quarter goals, what did you do to allow for that?
Well, I am a firm believer that innovation is about adoption, right? At the end of the day, there's a million ideas out there. And to Dave's point, unless people are using the technology and can scale that technology and use it on an ongoing basis, you just have a bunch of ideas. So, the culture at YVR, I mean, we're a very operational focused organization, move people, planes and bags. That's what we do. And so the innovation component to it was, an interesting to get people to think about that. What we've used the digital twin for is not only to solve problems, but it's to help people imagine how a technology can help them solve problems. So I'll give you an example. We have our maintenance team, our frontline maintenance team. They go out and they fix everything. Largest building in BC. You can imagine how much work there is going on from a maintenance point of view at an airport. Probably, when I was going into this, probably would have thought they would have been the laggards to be able to adopt this technology. They're one of the first out of the gate. And what we did, what we did with the twin, and what the twin does is it pulls data from multiple places. And we just went to them and said, what is it that you need? And one of the things that they need, they have work orders. They don't know where to go in the building. And so we solved a little problem for them. And then with the digital twin, it has that ability over and above good data and analytics to help people visually or viscerally experience what you're building for them. So once they could see that, hey, I can know where my work orders are. It tells me where I go in the building. It has, I call it a kind of a honey-do jar as part of the technology, where it tells them other work orders that are around them that they might not even know about, and they can go and fix those. And so they have this huge sense of accomplishment. The technology is right in their hands. It provides value to them every day. So it's those kind of things that help them. And then the next thing you know, they want more. And then you show that to one group and then another team. Oh, it drives the ideas and the thoughts about what the technology can do for them. So I agree 100% with Dave. There's lots of technology out there, you know, but it's about adoption and getting people to use it. That is the secret to innovation.
And David, you've got a very broad workforce, or very diverse workforce, from everything from engineering to through trades, management, operations. Tell us your perspective on that and driving innovation into all parts of the organization.
Yeah, so I agree with the points that have been made. I mean, I think we look at sort of innovation through the lens of one of my favorite books. It's old now, but The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen. Most of you probably heard of that. And it's a long time since I read it. But essentially, you know, we have a lot of efforts which I would put into the sort of evolutionary kind of innovation category. And those are arguably easier to justify. You know, you can have data to say, we have this bottleneck in this process or this bottleneck in manufacturing. And then you can go and design a solution and you can build a business case and do the innovation. And we continually do that. You know, we're continually upgrading. We've just put in some robotic welding and robotic steel cutting, for example. And those are just easily justified. And that's kind of all over the organization, both on the trade side and also on the engineering and design side. The other part which we've introduced, I would say more recently, is the sort of more revolutionary. And this is where it's much harder to say, okay, if we do this innovation, it's actually going to have value. So we've taken, in some cases, a little bit more of a sort of build it and they will come approach, if I can put it that way. So as a specific example, our virtual reality facility, we call it the Holo ship, like the HOLO ship. And that was something that we invested in to build and install. And we are now working with the organization to start to use it. But it's already there, so they can start to see the value right away. So, you know, we bring in teams, for example, pull up the 3D model, and they're able to actually interact and be part of the model and walk around the ship and see sight lines and design and all that kind of thing. And so they can instantly start to see the value of that, where I think if we'd started with that one as sort of trying to convince them, you know, we would have run into some of the, quote, traditional shipbuilding type techniques, which is more paper and drafting and that type of thing. So for us, the way we're doing it, I guess, to sum it up, is sort of a combination of the sort of evolutionary type innovation, which is pervasive through our organization, and then the more revolutionary, where we see new technologies and to some extent we just bring those in and then start to work with them. So.
Right. Yeah. And Dave Cummings, David starts to touch on benefits and the kind of the return on investment of innovation. So that often goes across, I've heard, you know, cultural things and employee things. We've heard competitive differentiation and positioning, you know, bringing new ideas. How do you look at, you know, you've been at the Finning Digital has been in place, you know, a number of years now, or started a number of years ago. You've brought it inside Finning. How do you see the benefits of driving this innovative culture and changes in ways of working?
Yeah, well, I think I'll bridge off David's comments, actually, because, I mean, first off, the first thing I think we should all accept is every company is different. Their culture, their ability to consume and absorb, willingness to invest is different. In fact, it's different from decade to decade with different CEOs and board members and so on. So it's very situational and circumstantial. I know there are certain things that I could get approval for today, given the last 2 years increased focus on ESG, that I couldn't have gotten approval for 2 years ago. And that is nothing to do with Finning's culture. It's to do with what's happening in society, what happened during COVID and so on. So it's very situational. But let me give you a more general, you know, in the end, I would just go back to what I said earlier. You have to find a way to be relevant. And if you can find a way to be relevant to the culture of that company, what matters to that company, you know, Lynette said earlier that they're very operational in nature. That's what's relevant there. Now, in companies generally, I would say for most large companies, one of the most important and difficult things to do is to decide how to use capital. how to deploy capital. And if you are that type of company, and Finning is, your relevance is associated with the business you're in. I've always tried to tell people, I'm not trying to create an alternative to Finning. I'm trying to amplify the 90-year-old company. And if I can find the right sweet spot to what matters to the business model, I then have to demonstrate that attracting capital to it has benefits for us, either intangible benefits, reputational, but usually, frankly, it's about market growth and profitability, to be totally blunt about it, or effectiveness for our customers and their value, which would lead to market growth and profitability. So what we typically do, and we will take a punt on things, we have, much like David, there are certain things we have today. We would never have gotten started if I didn't have some skunk works working in the background. If there's anyone from Finning listening, that never happens anymore. That kind of really does. So I do feel like as leader, you've got to find a way to allow people to be creative and explore and fail. I don't personally like the term, what's the term that gets used? Fail fast. I don't like that, because we have a 90-year-old company with a brand reputation. I can't fail fast. I have to fail safe. And so there's certain things we do to calibrate how we do things when we're experimenting, but you do have to create experimentation. But for us, the key is create value for the customer. If I can connect to that in what you're doing and experimenting with, and then behind that, I can attract capital by demonstrating how that translates into market share growth or reduced emissions or whatever, it will usually get a lot more attention in my particular company. But if I had to put one word to it, be relevant. Find out what is relevant, try and focus on it, and you'll usually have a room full of people listening carefully.
Perfect. Let's shift our focus a little bit related to that. Let's shift the focus a bit to talking about ecosystem partners and bringing ideas in from the outside. There's a question here in the chat about organizations getting involved. There's big ecosystem partners, small ecosystem partners, but let's shift to a question around how have you leveraged partners, ecosystem partners, to innovate inside your organization. Maybe Lynette, do you want to lead off?
Yeah, that's the whole concept behind our innovation hub at YVR. Partnerships and working with others is really, really important to us. We have a purpose at the airport, to support our local economy and the organizations and businesses, whether they be in Vancouver, whether they're in BC or Canada, we have a role to play to be able to support those organizations. So when we look at how do we get our innovations done and we do things that are important to the airport, there's a number of different ways that we can work. We can do our own innovations that help our daily operations, and some of the examples I talked about earlier are around that. But there's also some pretty transformational innovations that we need to do around climate, and we're modeling out the airfield right now. We know which planes are moving when, where they're moving, where all the equipment's moving through some data feeds that we have. And so how do we calculate the number of GHGs that are being emitted on the airfield? So I use that as an example for partnerships, because through the Innovation Hub, we're looking for partners, whether they be higher education, whether there are big tech startups, or just companies that want to do work and partner with us for creating something that's bigger than the airport itself. Right. So, for example, BCIT has a program that is around IoT. They just started the program, and instead of building their own lab, YVR is their lab. All of Sea Island is their lab. They're working on a water quality monitoring sensor program for us right now. It's a fantastic example of how you can have a partnership with higher education to be able to do some pretty interesting things as an airport. We have some big tech companies. Pretty much every type of technology can be tested or trialed at an airport. Right. And so there's an opportunity for companies to come in and test and trial their whatever it is that they want to get to market. That helps them grow as a company. And we have the added benefit of they can test it in the physical environment, but also with the digital twin, they can test it in a virtual world as well. So it has a lot of that those assets are very, very appealing to different partners. So
Right.
depending on the use case that we're trying to solve and who's available and what types of problems we have, that's how we're working with different companies through the Innovation Hub.
And well, Dave, I'm sure there's a lot of Finning gear on the airport grounds. David, I'm not entirely convinced there's an icebreaker there, but tell us a little bit more about your perspective on ecosystem partners and leveraging the ecosystem.
Sorry, Mike. Okay, so I'll go. So,
Sure.
I mean, we're a little bit unique because we actually have a very broad strategic mandate under our shipbuilding strategy to build and grow the Canadian marine sector and the shipbuilding industry. So under that, we have very strong incentives for driving Canadian content in our supply chain and in all our programs. And we have some other obligations as well. The simplest way to answer the question in the chat is we have a very large supply chain. Our supply chain is over 650 Canadian companies, and something like 460 of those are in BC. And there is a formal process. We have a supply chain website where, the first step for anybody should be to register as a supplier to Cspan, tell us what you're good at, and then when RFPs come out, you'll get those. So that's sort of a formal way. If you have stuff that you want to sell to Cspan, that's the way to do it. On the innovation side specifically, we have a number of obligations to invest in that kind of technology. And so one of the things we've done actually very recently around our whole digital ship strategy is we actually went out to the industry, the technology sector, started with an expression of interest and then an RFP, looking for partners who would bring their technology and essentially integrate and become part of our overarching solution. And the unique part of that is we also have money set aside to invest in those partners. So we want those partners to be successful. So Cspan will put its own money into those investments. And so that we haven't quite finished the final selection of the first set of partners. And we've learned some lessons on how we would do the process differently. But there will be another round of that for sure, that type of thing for sure. So, in terms of back to your ecosystem, we're absolutely looking to build ecosystems. The first one is around digital ships, but I think there are some others in the future. I could easily see the clean marine technology being one. I mentioned autonomous as another area that we're certainly looking at, autonomous ships and autonomy in general. So, I guess watch this space, and we did reach out through BC Tech when we released our EOI, and so that is the other main opportunity to work with us from an innovation standpoint. So, but we're always open to ideas, but we also get a long stream of them. So
I bet.
We have to.
And Dave, before we move on to sort of general wisdom and advice from the three of you to the sector here, anything else you'd add to that comment on ecosystem partners?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I would be doing a terrible job as a board member of BC Tech if I didn't suggest a membership of BC Tech as a great way to find your way for startups. I mean, the whole mission of BC Tech here is to help, and I think we're talking about crew driver here with the person that's raised the question, but the first thing I would say is look at BC Tech as a resource to help engage with potential established commodity-based or traditional industries. There's some great collision events that we have there and a network that is entirely designed. And the whole reason I'm on the board is I felt that they weren't doing enough in this space. It's entirely designed to find marriages between innovative technology companies and our industrial industries in Western Canada. So if you don't want to join as a member, at least reach out to the staff there and they will definitely introduce you. And when it comes to Finning specifically, send me an email, dave@finning.com. I'm always interested to listen, and if I can't listen, one of my staff will. But I do believe that one of the reasons why startups don't survive and thrive as well in Western Canada versus the east of Canada, which is statistically a fact, is because we haven't seen the opportunity between traditional industries and emerging industries yet, and the marriage of them. So let's all do more to try and improve that.
Wonderful. So I think we'll start taking some questions, and I think I'll ask David and Lynette we'll use some of these questions to pass on the parting wisdom and advice that you have for the BC tech sector. There is a question here in the chat around the importance of adoption and thoughts on change management and the challenges and the tips to drive this sort of large scale change. Any one of you want to take that one on?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Sure, perfect.
So I think the key thing is don't think of it as large scale change. You might end up with large scale change, but don't set out that way. So what's been really, really important for us and the amount of work that we've accomplished in the last 2 years has been phenomenal. But the team has really, Dave, you called it skunk works. I call it agile. Just let the teams go and try things and do things really, really fast. And you'll be amazed at how much energy will build off of that. So find a partner that has a problem that needs solving. A real solid one, like someone that's really looking for some answers, and then try something. And then when whatever happens to that, try something, keep going. Large term planning, creating, roadmaps for multiple years, I just find you just end up spinning around and trying to figure out what your long-term plan is, when you could actually have delivered some really significant value to the organization. So getting back to providing value, providing it quickly, and finding those right partners that you can do that with. Don't try to boil the ocean all at once. So that would be my big advice on that.
And I would add the thing that my team gets sick of me saying is that, the value, I always push that the value you need to think about is how do you drive competitiveness? So, how do you make whatever you're doing into something that is going to improve competitiveness? So for Cspan, we want everybody and all our partners to think about, like, whatever you're doing, how is it going to make collectively all of us more competitive, both in Canada, but for us, it's very much looking at the global environment. So, are we going to higher quality, lower cost, but what's the competitive advantage? Not just, and I think Dave said this at the top, don't come with just, here's the great technology advantage. Show me how it's going to make it more competitive in some way.
Dave,
there's not much I could add on the context of change management in the traditional sense. I would just ask you to think of it a little differently. The change management, for a variety of reasons, has been the narrative has been turned into a defensive thing. It's something you do to defend against the resistors. And I frankly abhor the use of that approach. Unfortunately, you can't change the narrative because it's been around for years. It's been around for a long time. And I've got to go and manage all of these people so they don't stop the change that I think they need to have done to them happening. It's not about change management. It's about progress identification. It's about progress articulation. It's about goodness. It's about what is the good in this. And again, that good has to be relevant to the agenda of the individual or the company. But I would suggest do not read the change management and the cycle of denial that you have to beat down and all the normal stuff that's out there in academia on change management. Just focus on how to have an articulate, informed conversation that's relevant to the people that you're trying to attract, frankly.
Maybe a longer term question. So the three of you, senior leaders in major parts of the BC economy, fast forward 2 years, 5 years from now, what would you like to see in the BC economy in the BC tech and innovation space. What are your aspirations for all of us?
I will hold off for David or Lynette, given I just I have some thoughts, but I will wait.
Perfect.
I mean, I guess I'll hit on the thread. I think, at least in our sector, there is a tremendous opportunity to build up a deep sort of digital twin capability. You know, and I'm by no means an expert, but my observation often is that digital twin is really, like, people think of it as just a model of something. Mm-hmm. The really powerful part about a digital twin is how do you then use that model and that data heap, and how do you operate on it, and how do you use it? And I think there's a real opportunity to build up, you know, capabilities around using things like artificial intelligence, or you know, in our case, the whole Internet of Things sensors and sensor integration and all that, to really create a capability here that I mean, certainly it can be applied in our sector, but I think it can apply in other sectors. And there are some really great companies that are doing some good things in this space in BC. So I would love to see a much stronger sort of digital twin, but not just the visualization piece, mm-hmm. you know, the deeper, really deeper digital twin capability, right, in this area.
Lynette?
Yeah, we always are looking for the triple word score on everything. Any of you that play Scrabble, you know, you get one word and you tick off a bunch of things. And I think, you know, what success looks like for us when it comes to supporting the economy is that, you know, the airport has problems. We have lots of problems to be solved, and being the orchestrator between different companies to be able to help solve those problems, bring them together. We've already had situations where companies that were trying to work with major technology companies, local companies here in BC, that were trying to work with major companies, they just couldn't get that entrance into it. Now they both worked on the digital twin for us, and they have long-term relationships that have nothing to do with YVR. So that's really important to us. We also have the sustainability and friendship agreement with Musqueam at YVR, and so we have a number of companies that are interested in working with us. So through that orchestration of the innovation hub, they're offering bursaries for Musqueam for Musqueam students, or training opportunities for Musqueam. And so it's having that ability as an organization to you know, help with reconciliation, help with the digital agenda, and growing this whole ecosystem within BC to help on the climate front. We always are looking for the opportunities to work on all of those fronts. We do not see them as an or, we see them as and you know, by not looking at big long plans and just moving and trying to put people together and have those conversations that are important, it's amazing that what will show up that you never even thought of. And so I think it's really, really important to try to be looking at supporting the economy. So for me personally, you know, when I retire at some point, and I can look back and I can see a number of local businesses that have scaled beyond BC, beyond Canada, and they're working globally. I think, and I could say that it had some part of their work that they did with YVR. That would make me one proud person.
Awesome. And Dave?
Much the same. I mean, I already have spent considerable time thinking about what my legacy should be as I'm ramping down, and it is very much centered around one simple thing. And the reason why I love the work that Jill Tipping and her team are doing here at BC Tech, it is horrifying to me to see the degree to which we export innovators out of BC to other parts of the world, whether it's the United States or even Eastern Canada more latterly. It's a ridiculous situation. And frankly, it's been harder to get provincial and federal governments to take notice because there hasn't been a crisis in the province economically for a long, long time across the province. And often it takes a crisis or an innovative visionary to get attention on these things. But we need much more focus on the government, on the opportunity that's in front of us to help startups and innovators alongside the traditional industries of BC. And frankly, when I say innovation, it's not just technology. I know also bio and pharma and clean tech technologies. There are so many incredible, talented people around the province that struggle to get attention. So if I was to see one thing, I would summarize it like this: that BC is seen as a haven and safe place to grow innovative companies, and that we are attracting ideas in, not exporting them out, because there's a lack of government support and capital to allow them to grow. And we all have a part in that. Industry has a part in playing to play in that, as do the startups themselves.
Wonderful. It's, you know, if I link all of that together, just hearing this thought of innovation, local companies driving innovative ideas, leveraging the foundational companies in British Columbia to grow, to apply and apply relevant innovations into those industries so you can scale. And then together, I think, Lynette, you made this point a few times, tackle some of the most important challenges that we face in the future around things like sustainability and climate change. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate the words of wisdom from all three of you and the participation here.